Get 6 months of local news for just $2. You get unlimited access to the news and information you need to stay connected to your community. Visit inforum.com/subscribe to get 6 months of local news for just $2.
You're listening to Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. I'm your host, Rob Port. If I sound distracted, it's because I've been busy covering this story all morning. I'm joined by my co-host, Chad Oban.
He's right of center, I'm left of center, both sides of the political spectrum.
I think it's cathartic. I think it's a necessary and proper debate. I'm glad we're having it.
And honestly, we have to do better.
Okay, I don't know why I'm getting blamed for this, right? Friends, I got to tell you, it's not been a fun stretch for me since the last time we spoke. The Yankees are not doing well in the American League Division Series. The Blue Jays have basically stuffed them in their locker the last two games, which brings us to today's show and my first question for our guest. And by the way, Zach Raknerud joining us as the guest co-host today. Chad's out. And our guest today is Congresswoman Julie Fedorchak. And my first question for you, Julie, would it be possible to make the Blue Jays illegal? Can we do that for me, please?
Oh, I'll see if I can run that up the flagpole.
Run that up. Let's see
who their fans are, but the last game where that young pitcher who was in the minor leagues came through and pitched the entire game. What was his name?
Schlittler, believe it or not.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. What a great story. So
the Red Sox. Yeah, he was absolutely amazing. Funny fact about him, he's from Massachusetts.
Wow.
And then shut down the Red Sox for the Yankees. So maybe he's not going to be able to go home again. I don't know how that works.
Well, I have a fondness for the Yankees going back to being my first pregnancy with our oldest. I was on bed rest when they were in the World Series, and so we watched them. And the last game, I was in labor, and we thought we were going to miss it, but I actually delivered her really fast, and we were holding her in our room watching the final game of the series, and got to see the whole thing. I didn't miss any of it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I actually that 90s run, the 1996 when they won the World Series, I was actually in the hospital as well. I'd had a snowmobile accident. And I remember watching them run through that postseason. All right, we didn't talk about baseball.
Sorry,
not even here, and we're completely off track, and it's my own fault. We want to talk a little bit about, obviously the government shut down. There's a lot of things going on. One thing I wanted to start with, though, you and I had a conversation a while back, and you and I disagree about President Donald Trump quite a bit. And one thing that I asked you is if there was ever a red line that he could cross that would be like that's enough for you. And you said it's to abide by the courts.
Correct.
So I'm reading here. This is a headline from the New York Post, not exactly a font of left-wing sentiment. And the headline is, Trump defies federal court, sends 300 California National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon. This is despite a federal judge essentially finding that President Trump's determination about the situation of Portland was untethered to the facts. So what do you make of that, where the courts have said you can't deploy the troops, he's deploying the troops anyway? Does this concern you?
Well, I think he needs to follow the courts, like I've said before. I haven't followed that story or caught up with that this morning. They have the ability to appeal. My understanding was that they were appealing that. I know they disagree with that judge's ruling significantly. But my conversations with the administration you've got to follow the courts, appeal it, and go through that process. That's how the system's designed.
So, Congresswoman, one thing I wanted to jump into is with the government shutdown. We have kind of two different sides here going at it. The primary point of one side is that there's Affordable Care Act subsidies that are set to expire pretty soon. I've talked to a lot of folks recently, and there's plenty I know who are very reliant on these subsidies on the exchanges, including farmers and many families in North Dakota. And on the other side, we have this claim that the Democrat CR funds healthcare for illegal immigrants. And frankly, it just seems like baloney. Like, I'm not seeing any mechanism where that happens. They're not eligible for any federal programs, including the exchange. So my question for you is, do you have any hope that we can reach a compromise on this to restore some of these subsidies that are going to prevent, we're already seeing so many insurance companies say that premiums are going to rise dramatically?
Thanks, Zach. So we could probably spend the entire time talking about that one question because there's really three questions baked within it. So I'll start with the first one, which is the government shutdown. The government shutdown, in my opinion, is the responsibility lies strictly with those who voted to shut it down. And we passed, several weeks ago now, a clean continuing resolution to keep the government open. We should not be shut down. This is not a controversial thing. The Democrats had voted for this same level of funding, even just back in March. And they are on record across the board. Every single one of the Democrat leaders is on record saying government shutdowns are bad for people. They're bad for Americans. You shouldn't shut the government down when you don't get your way. They're all on record saying that. So we presented a very simple, clean, straightforward way to keep the government open, and they have consistently voted against it. So that's where I see, it's their responsibility. They have tied the shutdown, which the deadline for that was September 30th. They've tied that to the expiration of the COVID tax credits, which are at the end of the year. So those two are not connected. They're separated by 3 months. And we were very much at work developing a solution for what we're going to do about that expiration.
Let me just on that point specifically, talking about the ACA situation. Our insurance commissioner, John Gottfried, who I'm sure you know, spoke to that on an episode of Plain Talk not that long ago. He warned that if in a situation where if we don't fund these things, we're going to see a death spiral, was his words, death spiral. Mm-hmm. And he talked about, saying, well, it's just a few months, at the end of the year. This is what he said about that. I quote, "If they look at doing something, changing it in December, well, at that point, I've already gone on, shopped as a consumer, and realized the price is too high. I'm not going back in the last 2 weeks of the year to say, oh, well, maybe this time they promise it's going to be better." So his argument is putting this off to the end of the year is going to be bad news. What's your response to that?
So I hope you're not surprised to know that I've been in many conversations with John about this issue and our health insurance providers. Yesterday afternoon, I spent the entire afternoon, in fact, having a round table with our hospitals, long-term care associations, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, the insurance department, talking about this issue and others. And so I'm well aware of their concerns and the timelines here. So I want to address that, Rob, but I want to go back to what Zach was saying previously first, which is, so they're disconnected on timelines. Thirdly, on the illegal aliens and what the Democrats are proposing, it's really, really important for citizens to understand this. They have presented, their CR includes a $1.5 trillion in new spending, and included in that is a rollback of all of the health provisions we passed in the Working Families Tax Cut Act. All of those health provisions. In that act, we closed the loophole that blue states, Democrat states like California and New York, were using to provide funding, federal funding, to cover illegal immigrants on Medicaid. The federal government can't tell the states that they can't themselves create a program to fund illegal aliens on Medicaid. It's a state-federal program, collaboration. They can have their own requirements. Federal dollars cannot be used for providing health insurance or Medicaid to illegals. But the states can go ahead and decide to fund it themselves. California and New York do. And they were using federal dollars to cover their state match for illegal aliens. We closed that loophole. in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. And now by repealing this, they open up that loophole again, and they do indeed allow for coverage on Medicaid for illegal immigrants. That's why even the CBO agrees that these dollars could be used for providing illegal immigrants Medicaid. So that's, that isn't a 30-second soundbite, obviously. That took me a couple minutes to explain, which is why you can easily understand how this message is getting lost in the national back and forth on this issue. But it is the truth that they are repealing the entire health package of the One Big Beautiful Bill, and that's where we close the loophole that would prevent federal dollars from being used to provide insurance for illegal immigrants.
So, Congresswoman, one piece of that I'm kind of struggling with a little bit is when it comes to this idea of paying for healthcare for illegal immigrants. Isn't the choice we're kind of faced with in this scenario is either to force hospitals to provide uncompensated care and to shoulder that burden, or to start administering citizenship tests in the emergency room and to turn people away who aren't citizens? Like, I'm kind of lost on how we're going to navigate that situation if it comes to it.
Well, I think the most important thing, Zach, is to make sure that we're not incentivizing people to come into our country illegally. And that's what you do when you create programs like this that provide pretty lucrative benefits to folks who arrive here illegally. So that's the federal government's responsibility. We don't want people coming illegally. We've got to stop incentivizing them.
I do think it's a mistake for Democrats to sort of on that issue. It's really hard over the years when we've heard, communities in blue states and maybe in blue states themselves that will say we're sanctuaries, we're not going to enforce immigration law, and then turn around and claim, well, there's no possible way that federal dollars could be used for healthcare for illegal immigrants, and clearly that's happening through the Medicaid program. So I think that's important. What's more concerning to me, and maybe you're ready to address this now, are Insurance Commissioner Gottfried's comments, saying waiting to the end of the year on this thing isn't good enough. You said you've heard their concerns. Why not now? I mean, why not address that now? It's going to have to be addressed in the end of the year. I mean, it's October 7th today as we record this.
Right.
I mean, the end of the year is not that far away.
We want to address it. We want to address it, as soon as we can. But you don't need to tie it to a continuing resolution to keep the government open. Like that it's inaccurate and it's ineffective to tie it to that. So we have been working on this. This is in the Energy and Commerce Committee. So we've been working on this. There's a number of good solutions for this program. But as it relates to this too, I want to take a second to educate a little bit on this program as well. So this is the enhanced premium tax credits. There are premium tax credits that are not enhanced. These were enhanced under the Biden administration to allow and incentivize more people during COVID to get insurance, right? So they extended the criteria, made it available for more people. So basically, they took off the income cap. It used to be the income cap was 400%, and they basically changed it so that anybody who was spending 10% of their income on health insurance 10% could get the premiums. So that pool is several thousand, maybe 7,000 North Dakotans, the people that are using the enhanced premium tax credit. It is not the full 50,000 or more who are getting the premium tax credit. So it's a smaller pool. I'm not trying to suggest that it's unimportant, but I think it's important to recognize that the entire premium tax credit program is not in jeopardy here. It's just the enhanced piece that the Democrats extended and put a deadline on. So, let's remember that too. They even recognized they could have made it permanent a couple years ago when they were in control, and they didn't, because it was intended to be a temporary thing to help people get insurance coverage. Now, There's ways to do it so that there isn't like a cliff, and I support that. I don't think we should have a cliff where all of a sudden they go away. But keep in mind, this is a $350 billion program if we extend it as is. So it warrants some policy discussion. It warrants careful consideration of how we do this. And so we want the time to do that in full in committee, not attaching it to a continuing resolution that's agreed to by the, 4 leaders basically and President Trump. So I really think we need to open the government up and get back to business negotiating this and coming up with a real solution that is the right solution for this program at this time and gets us going in the right direction.
So shifting gears a bit, I kind of want to talk about the trade war and everything that's going on there. So it sounds like today we're going to be getting an announcement of some kind about soybean farmers specifically. But my question really centers around, we recently saw the $20 billion debt swap with Argentina, and now they are selling soybeans to China. My overarching concern with a lot of this that's going on when you tariff the entire world all at once is that, farmers, the number one thing they want is markets. And I'm gravely concerned that come next year, that there's going to be no markets. Like all these trading partners of our past are going to find new options for free trade, regardless of what kind of deals we can get done. So I'm just kind of curious your thoughts on that. Where do you see us going as far as taking care of our farmers in that way?
Absolutely. I see really 3 or 4 different key policy priorities as it relates to agriculture. First of all, I 100% agree with you, Zach, on the markets. Our farmers want markets, and that's they don't want more government assistance. They've been clear on that. I've been talking with them on this since I was first in office in January, and even before. So we got to get the markets. Is it taking longer than I hoped, or even than I think the Trump administration expected? I think it is. So there's an urgency to this that is really critical right now. And I've been expressing that to the USTR, to the USDA, like on a regular basis. We are in conversation with them about this. There have been some good deals announced. Vietnam announced a significant increase in purchases. No, Taiwan increased their purchases by 25%. That's going to help. There's other countries, UK, also increasing their purchases of ag products. I know the Trump administration has this front and center. They're trying to negotiate a whole bunch of other things with China, and China has weaponized agriculture. So that's the situation that we're in right now. So short term, I'm supportive. I sent a letter to President Trump last week of some sort of a market facilitation grant program to help our farmers get through this fall, because they basically have been blocked from access to the markets. And so somehow we got to get them some cash to pay off their loans, because they aren't able to sell their soybeans in virtually anywhere, very limited markets. So that's the first thing. Second and third, though, there's other big structural things that I think are going on with agriculture, and that is the inputs. The input costs are way too high. We have to try to get those down. Energy costs are built into those, so that's one area where I think we can make some gains and drive down energy costs. The cost of fertilizer, we should be producing more fertilizer in the U.S. I think some of the trade negotiations could help us get some of that fertilizer production back in domestically. So that would be helpful. So there's the input costs, there's credit. We need to make some improvements in how farms are financed. Their credit costs are too high. So that's a big problem. And then, the whole regulatory issue with the farmers and some of the land issues. So there's a number of things we can work on agriculture and are working on and to address their challenges kind of globally. The good news is that we did get a good chunk, like probably 85% of the Farm Bill passed in the Working Families Tax Cuts Act. And so we've got the crop insurance improvements are already passed and in law. We raised the reference prices. So once we get through this fall, I think we have some structural improvements for the farmers going to the next growing season. But we do need to open up those markets and address some of these other challenges, like the input costs that farmers are facing.
Is there a point at which it's time to admit that the tariffs thing, this approach of just slamming tariffs down, and really at times, I mean, it's hard to track what our tariffs are. I mean, people have to wake up in the morning and read Truth Social to find out sometimes what our trade policy is. Is there a point at which we admit that that's just not working? I mean, it seems like we've seen this show before. During the first term, we did the tariffs, and then we had to bail the farmers out. Now we're doing tailored tariffs, and it sounds like we're going to bail the farmers out again. Our ag commissioner, Doug Goring, is in the state saying, basically saying the words he used were doom and gloom. He says, it's not that prices are bad. We've lived and farmed with these prices before. Our problem is the cost of production, the input cost that you're talking about. It's going through the roofs. It says tariffs add more costs, which continue to inflate the price of goods and services. And then he said, even if you drop interest rates, you actually boost inflation. I'll tell you another issue, interest rates. And I've had producers say we need lower interest rates. And I'll tell you, you could give them the money for free and they still wouldn't make it. That's what our Republican ag commissioner is saying. I mean, is there a point at which admitting this doesn't work? Because it doesn't seem to be working. I don't know what we're accomplishing.
Well, the economics in agriculture right now are really, really tough. I mean, we are definitely seeing that across board and in constant conversation with the ag community on this issue. And I'm meeting with Doug this afternoon as well, and the corn growers tomorrow. So as it relates to tariffs, just recently, the House extended the authority that the president is acting under to negotiate these tariffs to January. And so we want to give them a little more time because, we do have to constantly step back and look at the bigger picture here. Both Rob and Zach, look what happened during COVID when we saw the dependence that our supply chain has on other foreign countries. We don't produce enough goods in America. We couldn't even, go to the bathroom without having toilet paper during COVID. Like, it was really bad. And
but
so
one of the great things, I mean, we're told all the time, America produces far more food than Americans could ever consume. So
we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, but that's the trade-off. So trade goes both ways. So what do we export? We export agriculture. What do we import? Just about everything else. And so if we want to get some of these imports, some of that manufacturing back into the U.S., and we have to negotiate with our other countries, the thing that they're using as a tool, that kind of their weapon against us, is agriculture, because that's what they buy from us. So that's why it's so tough for farmers. They're the tip of the spear. And so that's why I think you're seeing, yes, I'm concerned. All of the other farm state representatives are very concerned. We are very, very eager to get a deal and start having some announcements. I texted Secretary Rollins last week and said, what's going on? When are we going to start seeing this? And she's like, we're working on it 24/7, any day. We're expecting to have some things finalized. But like I said, the ag issues are wrapped up in so many other non-ag related negotiations. And that's where, our farmers are just at they're in the crosshairs right now. So that's why I do support the temporary payment, the temporary assistance this year. I know it's not what farmers want. It's not what I want either. But it's going to be necessary if they don't get these export markets open so that they can actually have some cash, because soybeans is their cash crop. Soybeans was the cash that they used. They'd sell, got the cash, and started paying off their operating debt. So they need something to replace that. And so that's why I'm supportive of this. And they're using, if they do these payments, if we come up with a plan to use them, we'll be using tariff revenue to help support that, which also I think is appropriate.
So, Congresswoman, I'm going to be frank here. This question is extremely difficult for me to ask, but I feel like it needs to be asked. After this summer, we had the tragic murder of Democrat House Speaker Melissa Hortman. We had the evil murder of Charlie Kirk. I think it's safe to say that the national temperature has never been this high, or not never, but in recent memory. Yet not one time have I seen President Trump calm us down to say we need to come together as Americans Instead, I see him say over and over again that Democrats are demonic, that we're satanic, that we're evil. He's saying it in front of troops, Congresswoman. These are what I assume some of your friends, they're 30 to 40% of your constituents. You seem to have a bit of an ear of the president after your meeting in the Rose Garden, et cetera. Are you willing to ask him to turn the temperature down and to be a unifying leader we desperately need right now?
Listen, I believe in leading by example, and that's what I'm doing. I am one that tries to use measured language. I treat people with respect. I don't tolerate. I have zero tolerance for any sort of political violence or violence as a whole in any issue. You saw me, very much condemning the murder of the legislator in Minnesota. Doesn't matter, Republican, Democrat. There's no room for political violence, and absolutely, I'm encouraging all of my colleagues
How
to
about the
lead
president?
by example. Well, when I see the president, I'd be happy to encourage him in that way. Absolutely.
One last question before we go. We got about a few minutes left with you. We talking about the bailing out the farmers and everything, and we went through everything with Doge, right? Where all the massive spending cuts, and then during the government shutdown, that President Trump was promised dramatic additional cuts. The feeling sometimes on the rhetoric, because both at terms, I think Democrats sometimes overreacting to some of this and also Republicans overselling it at times, is that you would think that our fiscal situation would be improving. But I looked at the most recent, when I looked at it, maybe they've released the September numbers now, but I looked at the August numbers. We're still on track for a budget deficit this year of about $2 trillion. I have yet to see it demonstrated that Donald Trump is anything approaching a fiscal conservative. So when are we going to get this in hand? And what is Congress's duty to step up and make the guy? Well, I mean, assuming Congress has the will to do anything about it, to make the president do something about this, because this seems completely out of hand. Running an annual budget deficit in the ballpark of $1 to $2 trillion is not only unsustainable, I would argue, is dangerous. And also we talk about, not wanting to be dependent on supply chains and everything overseas. Well, we're sure as heck dependent on borrowing money from our creditors. So what is the national security implications of making ourselves so dependent on our creditors?
Absolutely, Rob. I 100% agree with you. And we aren't doing enough. We need to do more, which is why first step, we have to have a sensible appropriations process, which we're trying to do with this continuing resolution. We are closer than we have been in decades to getting a budget passed on the regular order, which means getting all of the budgets through a regular appropriation process. So we want to do that. We want to continue that, and we think we can complete that by the end of by November 20th. Is it going to be a balanced budget? No, it isn't, because we aren't going to do this all in one fell swoop, but it's getting us in the right direction. It's two things. It's revenues and spending. We've worked hard to correct and create a strong environment for growth in this country with the Working Families Tax Cuts plan. That's step number one. So hopefully we will see more investment, more revenues in our country as a result of that. And then we have to do more to cut spending. We are doing that. We have done that. You've seen the rescissions package, but it isn't easy. Make no mistake about it. Every single thing that gets cut or threatened, our phone rings off the hook, even from North Dakotans. I mean, I've been shocked at how many people are mad about the government not funding public television. I love public television. I love public radio. But the government does not need to be funding that. They can get that funding on their own. But we have had countless people complaining just about that. So this is hard. That doesn't mean it isn't important. We are going to keep working on it. And I'm thinking about this all the time. What sorts of parameters can we put in place? Tools can we use to force this issue and to get going in the right direction?
Is there a point at which we have to consider things on the revenue side as well?
You mean increasing taxes?
Possibly, yeah.
I wouldn't go there. That's not where I would start. But, I'm not saying that I would never do that. I would never say that about anything, but that is definitely not where I would start. I think we've got much more of a spending problem, not a revenue problem.
Julie, thanks for your time.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
Hey, Plain Talk listeners, have something to say? Call or text Plain Talk with your questions, comments, or headlines you want us to cover.
Just dial 701-587-3141. Leave us your message or shoot us a text with your name and location, and you could be featured on an upcoming show.
Hi, my name is Ashley, and I am in Jamestown.
Hey, Rob and Chad. My name's Tony. I live in Grand Forks.
That's 701-587-3141.
Call us, text us, vent, praise.
We want you in the conversation. Thanks for being part of the show.
Now let's get back to today's episode.
All right, welcome back to Plain Talk. Just finished our interview with Congresswoman Julie Fedorchak, which was very interesting. And I don't know. I mean, it feels like a lot of this debate right now is not ideological. We can have a fight over, are we paying? I will say, Zach, when you were asking about and sort of the argument that there's no way that these funds are going to illegal immigrants, unfortunately, I feel like states like California and New York have been bad actors on this front. And you look at the past where they have demonstrated a public unwillingness to enforce the law. I think it's one of the gravest political mistakes Democrats have made. I think it's central to the rise of Donald Trump and the position the Democrats are in now, and continuing to die on that hill, I think is a terrible mistake for them.
No, I feel you. I mean, it's tough politically. I just keep going back to, just the logistics behind it. Like, if we're not going to do that with folks who are here in the country illegally, are we going to make the hospitals hold the bag? Are we going to make, right. Are we going to start turning people away from the hospital? It's a catch-22. What do we do?
My problem is not so. I mean, I definitely want to take those problems head on. I mean, because you're right. They're there. Are we gonna like start checking somebody's citizenship status before we treat them for a heart attack? If they're a burn victim, do we have to check their green card and then ship them to Mexico or something before they can get treated? Obviously, we're not going to do that.
Right. I think it costs us more ultimately.
Should we do that? Because morally, that's repugnant. So how are we going to handle those things? My problem is people saying, I mean, to me, that's the argument. No illegal immigrants are being covered. Well, yeah, they are.
That's fair.
And now the question is, what are we going to do? Are we going to be cruel monsters and put burn victims on the street and not give them even emergency care because they don't have a green card? Or are we going to figure something else out? That's the debate we need to be having. Yeah. But by and large, I mean, the frustrating thing, I think, is that Congress has put itself in a position where they are just reacting to the presidency. I mean, Donald Trump is so completely in the driver's seat on this stuff. And, I feel like Congress has to act. And again, it's not even an ideological thing. It's a small R American Republic thing, like not Republican big R, Republican as in we have three separate and co-equal branches of government, and the other branches need to start doing their jobs.
Yeah, it's both. I mean, the legislative and the judicial at this point are really ceding a lot of authority. I mean, even the Supreme Court's ruling on the shadow docket in an unprecedented number of ways, granting just broad sweeping authority. And it sounds like we're going to get more of that. I mean, even just striking the Impoundment Control Act through the shadow docket, like it's not getting any better, unfortunately. So I'm not sure where this comes to a head at.
I don't know either. And there's a point at which some of these policies are just not working. I think I sense that the Congresswoman was pretty uncomfortable when we started talking about some of the things that local state level elected Republicans in North Dakota have been saying. Insurance Commissioner John Gottfried saying we can't wait to the end of the year to address this. The enrollment period is well now, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
And then you have Doug Goring saying, it's doom and gloom out there. It's, even if we gave farmers free money where there were zero interest loans, they couldn't make ends meet right now because of input costs and everything else. Is there a point at which I would very much like to see Congress take some of this tariff authority away from Donald Trump, which isn't saying that the times tariffs are an appropriate tool to try to get where we're going, only that allowing the president to exercise this authority unilaterally and on a whim. I mean, is there anything more whimsical than having to look at Truth Social to figure out what our tariff policy is? I mean, Congress needs to impose some order on this process.
Yeah, the uncertainty is what kills on this issue. It's crazy, and it really seems that congressional Republicans are just afraid of stepping out of line with Donald Trump to incur his wrath within the party itself. So they're hoping the Supreme Court will bail him out and to strike these unilateral tariffs down. Which who knows what they'll do, but I wouldn't bet on it if I were them.
That is the hard thing. Is right now our politics do not reward people who take nuanced positions on things. It's and right or left. It's like you're either on the team or you're off the team, and that's one of the things that is absolutely killing us. I did want to ask, because Julie and I did have a conversation, and actually the funny thing is I had to write my print. Sometimes I think people get confused. I have 2 columns a week that I have to write for print, which means that I have to write them ahead of time, and I struggle with this mightily, because I'm a very topical, very cutting edge, like what's going on now sort of person. It's hard for me to write 2 days ahead. But I wrote a column about that meeting that Julie came through Minot, and we had lunch, and I asked her, I said, is there a limit to this stuff with Donald Trump? And what is your red line? And she said he has to follow the courts. Well, he's not in Portland specifically. You have a federal judge that said you cannot deploy troops here, and then he just went ahead and did it anyway.
They tried to use the California Guard right away as a workaround, but then they shut that down too, and now we're at the point where they're definitely not listening.
Well, and the judge, right? It's not like some procedural thing about which National Guard he can use or something. It's the federal court said your justification for deploying the military domestically is untethered from the facts. What's in dispute here is it's almost like it's not even a legal question about the president's authority so much as it's a legal question about the facts. It's not in dispute that the president, under certain circumstances, has the authority to deploy the military domestically in cases of insurrection, things like that. What the president is doing is manufacturing a case for deploying the military domestically that's not true.
Yep.
It's facts on the ground. He's manufactured not just in Portland, but in Chicago and Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a little bit of a weird situation because they're a federal district, but certainly in the states, California, he's manufacturing a justification for this, and the courts are saying, well, so far, some of the courts are saying no. But you know what really surprised about me about this, Jack, is all the years I can remember, conservatives warning about this sort of thing, warning about the domestic use of law enforcement. I remember all the wild conspiracy theories about what Barack Obama was going to do with FEMA and taking things over. And now it's Trump supporters just completely acquiescing to the idea that Donald Trump has these unlimited powers to use the military domestically.
Yeah, and you can even look in historically at the Republican platforms from like Abraham Lincoln to Teddy Roosevelt very explicitly stated that one of the gravest, violations of our freedom is for the federal government to deploy troops to a state without their consent. And now we have the figurehead of the Republican Party doing that on a day-by-day basis. And I appreciated, I think it was you and Chad talking about the fact that, like, how would this go if it were President Obama sending in the National Guard to McKenzie County when Governor Dalrymple said no? Like, I have a feeling that every one of these people would have been hair on fire, understandably.
And that would have been the correct response too. We didn't need the National Guard. As during the oil boom, McKenzie County, Watford City, kind of the epicenter of the oil boom. We saw so many people coming in, law enforcement resources restrained, infrastructure resources restrained. We did have some crime problems. You bring that many people in, a lot of them young men. Now they have a lot of disposable income. That's a recipe for things to get a little rowdy for a while. And they certainly did. But we didn't need the National Guard. Certainly we didn't need a president to upstage our elected governor and say, we're going to send the National Guard there anyway. And even beyond that, when you start looking at some of the rhetoric that's being used, I thought your question to Congresswoman Fedorchak about the rhetoric that's used, where Democrats are demonic and terrible and domestic terrorists and extreme. The other day when I was looking up Treasury data, that was the message at the top of the website, is that the government is shut down because extremist Democrats or extreme Democrats, I'm forgetting the exact use of the word. I mean,
Rob, just real quick on before we move on from the deployments of the military, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this. I think we're going to come to a point sooner than later where I don't know if it'll be North Dakota's guard or if it'll be South Dakota's guard, but I feel like one of these neighboring states to Minnesota is going to be called for their guard to deploy to Minneapolis. And I'm curious, like, how do you think Governor Armstrong's going to respond to that? Like, what do you think the general attitude in the state will be if that happens?
Unfortunately, I think the reality is, a lot of the state might be fine with it. A lot of them might, because they've just decided that if Donald Trump wants it, he gets it. Unfortunately, I think that's going to be the reaction. I would not want to be Governor Armstrong and put in that position where on one side you have a mercurial, bombastic, revenge-orientated president who brooks no dissent at all, demanding that you deploy the men and women of the North Dakota National Guard to our, I guess to do, and we're talking about a hypothetical here, so I don't know what the justification would be. We don't need the North Dakota National Guard in Minnesota. But that being said, if he did it, I wouldn't want to be in Kelly Armstrong's position. Would he follow through with it? Probably. That's just the reality of what this is right now.
I pick his battles, and that would probably
I
not
would
want
like to see the stuff stop. I would like to see the courts, and some of them are trying to pump the brakes on it, but again, we'll see where that ends up. But it's a scary time, and again, to my right of center friends listening to this, remember that all the precedents that Donald Trump are setting could be used by a future Democrat president. One of the reasons why we support these norms, like these constitutional protections and restrictions, is precisely so that people, even if you love Donald Trump and you think he couldn't possibly wield this power in an untoward way, I don't necessarily agree with you, but even if you believe that, eventually we're going to elect another Democratic president. Do you want them to have that authority? Because I don't want anybody to have that authority.
Yeah, I don't even know what to say. It's a difficult time right now in that regard. So, all we can hope is that one of the checks and balances kicks in when it really needs to, because so far, no good.
I will say in one place where my mind has been going with some of this is the way that Democrats played politics with this sort of thing. Not exactly this sort of thing, but sort of in the same policy milieu when the Dakota Access Pipeline protests were going on and North Dakota law enforcement was overwhelmed. And our state put out a call for assistance to other states to send law enforcement in so that we could cycle them in and help control that situation down there, which I think everyone can agree was spiraling out of control at times. And we saw Democratic leaders, including then Governor Mark Dayton of Minnesota, refuse to send help. I thought that was such a terrible thing. And I think people remember that. And it doesn't justify anything what Donald Trump is doing now. That doesn't make it okay. But we've been doing this thing where we politicize these things for a while. And there's plenty of dirty hands to go around. And every new red line that we cross, like every escalation in this, just makes it worse. And then each one justifies it, says, well, you did this, so now we can do this. It's got to stop.
Yep. Somebody has to be the one to stop it. Yeah, I agree. It's like it escalates over time, and we're reaching the apex here. So, we're gonna see.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, a little bit. Let's bring it back to state politics. The Republican Party continually at war with itself, with a faction within it that is very much trying to use the arcane rules of party politics to make sure that only their people win elections. Something I always say is that elections are fundamentally simple, right? Whether it's a statewide election or if it's something that's happening in a small district committee room, it's really not that hard to debate an issue and then hold a vote at the end of the day. And I think anytime it gets hard, anytime somebody's out there making it complicated, it's usually because they're trying to use the rules to lock somebody else out. They're trying to use the rules to put their finger on the scale and get the outcome that they want, not by, a fulsome debate and large, in an engaged participation, but through just controlling who gets to participate. That happened in district. It's happened actually several times. We've had a slate of a spate. I guess that's what I said. I started to say spew and then I said slate. What I meant was spate of vacancies in the legislature. And in North Dakota, vacancies are typically filled by the political party of the vacated lawmaker gets to make the appointment. And usually, that's where sort of the populist MAGA faction of the Republican Party, that's where they shine. They're very, very good at packing a meeting room and using the rules of the meeting to sort of lock certain people out. They tried to do that recently in District 42. They tried to lock people out. It was so funny, Zach. At one point, they were arguing that allowing participants, Republicans, to pay their party dues at the door and to get in to be able to participate in the meeting would disenfranchise existing voters. Can you imagine that? That's like me saying that this candidate is disenfranchising me by bringing in more qualified candidate or qualified voters to the ballot. Just completely ridiculous. Yeah. So they did that. But Dustin McNally, who's a very, very moderate, very centrist Republican, won in District 42. It was narrow, but he won. Only about 40 people ended up participating. And so he gets to succeed Representative Emily O'Brien in District 42. She went on to work for the Armstrong administration. But now, having lost that, now they have petitioners in District 42 going around saying, not enough people participated now. Now we want to hold a vote. And so they're trying to collect signatures to force a special election, which the process for that, I think they have to collect around 650 signatures. Then it goes to the governor, and the governor gets to decide when there's going to be a special election. He could decide just to do it on the June. I don't know what the governor's going to do. I haven't talked to him about this at all. He could decide to do it on the June primary. I suspect that would be very likely. Why make the taxpayers pay for an election when we have one coming up here shortly? But the whole thing is just petulant and stupid, Zach. I don't understand it.
Yeah, honestly, it's a little discouraging to see that Pritchard is back at things again. It's just so funny that he could lose.
You're talking about Pritchard, former state rep Brandon Pritchard from Bismarck is now an activist for a group called Citizens Alliance. He now lives in District 42 in Grand Forks, and what Zach is making the fair assumption that he's behind a lot of this.
Yeah, and to see him lose like a primary election, that's to happen to a sitting legislator even for one term, and then to try to go to a whole other area of the state and to start doing the same stuff again. I really do hope that the people of District 42 can see through it. Even that close victory for McNally is encouraging. Hopefully that continues to hold, and as people pay more attention to what's going on there, they'll realize that his brand of politics isn't what we need right now.
Well, and O'Brien had just gotten reelected, so McNally has pretty much a full term in front of him. But under the law, he was already going to have to be on the general election ballot next year anyway. That race was going to have to be on the ballot next year. So the funny thing is if the governor puts it on the June ballot, McNally was already going to be on the June ballot in a primary for that seat because that's the law. So I don't even know what they're accomplishing by holding a special election when he had to go to the ballot anyway. And in this way, Zach, and this probably doesn't bother you that much, but from a Republican perspective, it's kind of stupid because if you put McNally on, then you have to assume he's going to get a challenger from the right, from this populist MAGA faction. So you have two Republicans on the ballot, but it's not just an election for Republicans. Democrats get to participate too, and libertarians and independent candidates, whoever else wants to participate, they can put a candidate on the ballot too. And so potentially what you're going to have two Republicans squaring off and one Democrat. So you have two Republicans splitting the Republican vote in a district that historically has been kind of purple.
Yep. Not exactly McKenzie County.
Right. You have two Republicans splitting the vote and then a Democrat. That's potential for a big pickup for Democrats.
Yeah. I suppose I should think of it that way. Like maybe it'll be a little advantageous for Pritchard to keep raining chaos in the Indy GOP like that.
And I think you know this about me, Zach. I am not necessarily in favor of Democrats winning elections because I'm a conservative Republican. That being said, I am in favor of Republicans losing elections when they do stupid things. Just from an accountability standpoint, I think that's really a big problem in North Dakota is that there are so many Republicans that are just in places where there is no real competition. And much as in the marketplace, that allows them to indulge a lot of stupid things. Like if you're operating a business and you have no competition at all, right? What does that allow you to indulge yourself? Probably poor customer service, high prices, poor quality of service. Because it doesn't really matter, right? So you can just kind of mail it in and you're going to get the business anyway. That's happening with a lot of our Republicans where they're not serving their constituents well. They're indulging some of their more outrageous ideological positions, and our state's not served well for it. So,
yeah. We've been saved a couple times by moderate good governors. Burgum and Armstrong both. They're not afraid to challenge the excesses of their party. And so, if we didn't have a governor like that, we could list a whole bunch of just really bad legislation that would have been on the law right now if it weren't for good governors.
And I think that's and really even, earlier when we're talking about some of these statewide leaders who are, I think John Godfrey deserves a lot of credit for speaking up about the premiums situation in terms of the big, beautiful bill and talking about, no, this bill did something really bad in this area of policy. He's a Republican. That's not an easy thing for him to do. I don't think it's an easy thing for Doug Goring to stand up and say, this is doom and gloom. The tariffs are killing us. He's right. First of all, Republicans nobody should be afraid to stand up and just say something that's accurate and have to fear reprisals. These gentlemen are correct about it. And so I think your point about, sort of more moderate centrist, first of all, it feels weird calling Kelly Armstrong a moderate, because he's not really, but he's certainly more moderate than some of the more extremes of his party. And you're right. I think because they more reflect where North Dakotans are as a majority anyway of North Dakotans are as an electorate, as opposed to some of these down in the weeds, hyper local races.
Yeah, our legislature has always in the past been so good about, taking the issues that matter to North Dakota and legislating on them. That's big credit to the Republican Party in North Dakota. The reason they've been so dominant is that they've been willing to adopt issues that make sense, even if they're left of center. Medicaid expansion is a good example of that. They voted for that, and it's been wonderful for our rural hospitals. And if they lose grip with that, who knows? Maybe they'll start to eke away some seats.
Because I remember, back in another, you roll back the clock 10, 15 years ago, I remember Democrats consistently complaining about Republicans stealing their ideas. Consistently, that was our idea first. Well, it was a good idea. And Republicans didn't mind, just because it started as a Democratic idea, they didn't mind swooping in and taking it. Credit where it's due sometimes, but at the end of the day, North Dakota won because of that pragmatism, which I think is missing now. Now we have one of the most absurd things I've seen from that faction of the Republican Party, and it was actually circulated by both Zach and I live in Minot. Zach actually lives just down the street from me. Both Zach and I live in Minot, and our city councilman Mike Blessum was circulating in Republican circles this legislative rating that was all based, it punished Republican legislators if they voted on a piece of legislation that Democrats also voted for. That was the whole premise of the rating. And it was absurd. What if it made no accounting at all for whether or not it was a good policy. It was just how often you voted with Democrats. Well, if a Republican does a really good job and convinces Democrats to come over and vote for a tax cut or something, why should they be punished for that? But that's kind of, to me, that always displayed the mindset of where a lot of people are at, where like more important than whether or not the policy you're supporting is good policy and workable policy is your loyalty to your team. That's the thing that matters more than anything else right now. And it's atrocious and it's killing us.
Yeah, that hyper partisanship it's a bit of a dismay for sure. And I moved to Minot in 2016, and I've seen some wonderful things happen in the city, and a lot of it's because we have just had normal, competent individuals who care about their communities, making investments where it makes sense, making cuts where it makes sense. And unfortunately, Minot's going in the wrong direction there, in that hyper tribalism of the Blessum, Fuller, Samuelson. I'm not confident that's going to get us somewhere good.
I just wrote that faction had a not so good council meeting last night. So that was a little fun to watch. And it is funny to me sometimes to watch these guys railing about ideology. Like, what's the ideology of fixing a pothole, for crying out loud, right? I mean, what's the ideology of plowing the roads? I'm all for like, hey, what's the efficient way to do it, and what's the cost effective way to do it? I'm all for those debates, but it's like, at the end of the day, I mean, that's really where the rubber meets the road. So maybe one day we joke all the time on the podcast about my just plow the damn roads party. Maybe Zach, you want to join up one day? We'll get some candidates on the ballot. And
the big one I say is I like my toilet flushing. That's the one I really appreciate.
Just clean water, plumbing that works. Declare war on potholes. Right. Keep the snow off the roads. This stuff ain't complicated, especially at the local level. All right, we're going to go there. Hey, coming up on the Friday show, we're going to have Chris Jones on to talk about some of this health policy stuff that's coming down from the federal level, is certainly impacting us locally. By the way, I'm also working on getting somebody on from the North Dakota Hospital Association. We're in negotiations to get somebody on. I make that sound like that's very, we're working on the schedule to get somebody on the show. When we had Insurance Commissioner John Gottfried on, he was pretty rough on hospitals and some of the price disparities that they're charging and some of the weirdness. Obviously, we want to bring on the other side and let them have a say as well. But Chris Jones is going to be on tomorrow. He's the former commissioner of the North Dakota Department of Health and Human Services under Doug Burgum. He's gone federally. He's done some work at the national level. He's going to be on the show on Friday, so stay tuned for that. Of course, follow us on all the social media things. We're at Plain Talk ND on YouTube and X and Facebook and did I say TikTok? TikTok. We're on TikTok. Follow us on TikTok if you're a TikTok person. Certainly appreciate it. Thanks for listening as always, and we'll talk again. That's it for today on Plain Talk, the voice of North Dakota politics. Plain Talk is a production of Forum Communications Company. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 701-587-3141. That's 701-587-3141. If you haven't subscribed to Plain Talk yet, you can find us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. For those of you who are already hooked, give us a rating or review. And don't forget to share or tell a friend. Special thanks to my co-host Chad Oban, and from myself and everyone at Plain Talk, thanks for listening.
What was his name?
Schlittler, believe it or not.
Amazing. Wow.